it's Vadiozo back again with another card fight Vanguard deck profile. So I hope you guys enjoy. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and donate to the Patreon. And let's get the one started. Today we have Keter Sanctuary, PBD, Phantom Blaster Dragon. You know, the good stuff. Good stuff is a highly debatable word because in my opinion, set 2 PBD is really weird. It feels like they could have done something else with PBD and it was a bit wonky, but then when they put one card into set 3, which I spammed the shit out of, or I would if I drew into it, somehow the deck became so much more comfortable. I don't know, I guess. But either way, let's go ahead and get this started. It's an interesting deck for sure. First up, we have our starter in Fullbau, 6k base, 5k shield, grade 0 with boost. Auto when rode upon if you win second, draw a card, nothing else special about it. I don't know if I mentioned this in the Magnolia video or not, but like, I really wish what they did with the starters is kind of like what they used to do with old ride line starters, where when rode upon by so-and-so, or sometimes this will happen, when rode upon by so-and-so, do a thing. And I kind of wish that they did that here, so like you had more incentive to pick a certain starter over another, because none of the decks require a specific starter. Quite literally, none of them. Like, yeah, if you want the correct ride line, you run the starter, but none of the grade 1s, 2s, or 3 require the starter to be in soul or on board. The only one that actually requires the starter, the only 2 actually that require the starter in the first place are Bruce, but it can be any starter. It just needs to be a starter that you call out of soul for Steve. And then there's Nirvana, but that's only in a highly debatable testing ground, because Nirvana can call grade 0s from drops, so you can use Ryu to Soul Blast your grade 0, but the starter does nothing. Like, I wish it had a benefit like that, to where if it was rode upon by so-and-so, you get a skill, or maybe like in certain decks, if it's on rear, like how they used to do in before V, because those were really fun starters in my opinion, but then they kind of just made them all vanillas, and it was really boring. Either way, he's an interesting starter. I like the moon in the background. That was slightly of a rant, but I don't care. Fullbau. Next up, we have our Overtrigger and Light Dragon Deity of Honors, Amartinoa. I said that completely wrong. 5k power, 50k shield, grade 0 with boost. Overtriggering me up to 1 overtrigger in the deck. When revealed as a trigger, remove that card, draw a card, choose one of these, and it gets plus 1 million to end of turn. If revealed during a drive check, activates additional effect. Additional effect until end of turn, you perform drive checks for the battles of your rear guards. So, you get rear guard drive checks. Not that bad. In this deck, you can equate to 6 if you either rush with 2 Fosados or 2 Blaster Darks, but in my opinion, I personally feel like this is and don't get me wrong, it's a really good overtrigger, but like the worst overtrigger out of the bunch, for the sole reason, like, yeah, it gets you hand advantage, but that's pretty much it. Like, Dark States and Bless Favor, and Infinitude from Brancate are the ones I think are really good, because they all have effects that are like, even though they don't kill you, they're gonna severely cripple the opponent. Like, Bless Favor is just an everything bagel, to where you're like, even if your opponent lives and has a bunch of resources, you just helped yourself out a great deal. Infinitude, I've died to on several different occasions. And the Dark States one, the one I pulled the least somehow, or actually no, it goes to this one that I pulled the least. Dark States is like a permanent plus 10k and a crit. Nirvana is a meh to me, but like, in this deck, it feels like they could have given us like another overtrigger that could have worked in all the decks, because Dark States feels like it works in all the decks. Nirvana's is a meh if we really go into real detail about it. Infinitude, I don't need to explain. Blessed Favor literally works with all of them. And this one, I feel like they could have made it more better. Like, maybe like what Lyrical does, where your rear guards get plus 10. That would make sense for Keter, because all of them have some form of rushing to some extent. So I wish Amartinoa, that's not its name either, gave it an effect, but I hope that we get another overtrigger that kind of gives it a more of a balanced effect for all decks. Once more of a rant, like 4 minutes in, I've already ranted about 2 different things that have nothing to do with this deck. But still, it's an interesting overtrigger nonetheless. 1 copy because you want to run an overtrigger. 3 copies of Knight of Heavenly Hammer Gurgant, 5k base, 15k shield, grade 0 with boost. We just have 3 crits, 4 draws of Knight of Heavenly Piers Gallus, and 4 fronts of Bard of Heavenly Song Alpac, 4k base, 15k shield, grade 0 with boost. Continuous guard circle, it's a front trigger by the way. If your opponent's Vanguard's grade 3 or greater, gets plus 5k shield, so it's a 20k shield. Nothing too special about it. Actually, no, that is something special about it. Sorry, wrong trigger. It is something special about it because the 20k shield make it a lot easier for you to guard, especially when you're calling down a bunch of units to sack for PBD skill. So I like this front. we run more fronts and draws than we run crits because the Vanguard already has crit pressure. You have an on-hit grade 3, so already they don't want to take 2 attacks, then you have the 3rd attack. Eventually, they're going to run out of hand cards because they're guarding the 2 things that actually matter, and then the last one is normally just a swing to swing. So you don't need more crits. You need draws to refill your hand from using PBDs, because I promise you, like, the first turn is not that much, second turn it's somewhat noticeable, third turn you're fucked. Because that's probably when you're going to start calling triggers to sack. And outpack, the thing you don't call unless you're forced to, or, just you're forced to. Like, either you have to call for PvD skill to go off, or you have to call it because stuff like Charon and Macha. And then we have our healer of Heavenly Staff Arshes. Just a standard heal, nothing too special about it. I like this heal. Next up, we have grade 1s. I don't know why it skipped to Charon. 3 copies of Witch of Pandering Brunner. 5k base, 5k shield, grade 1 with boost, continuous rear. If you have a Vanguard, a Blaster in its card name. When this unit be retired for your card's cost, it is regarded as retiring as 2 units. That is so helpful in PBD. Like, Blaster Dark doesn't need that. Macha doesn't need that. Anything else in this deck that I don't remember the name of that requires retiring, which I'm pretty sure there's no other cards besides PBD, doesn't need it. Because PBD requires 3. This automatically becomes 1. This is 2. This is your thing that you call from things like this motherfucker over here, and Macha, which we'll get to a lot later, and Blaster Javelin as well. Brunner is an amazing grade 3, grade 1, and I don't want to hear otherwise. 3 of. 3 of Black Sage Charon, 7k base, 5k shield, grade 1 with boost. Auto when it's placed on rear if you have a Vanguard Blaster in its card name. Rest it, look at the top card of your deck, you may call it to rear if it's a unit card. At the end of the turn, retire the called unit, put it at the top if it's not. Okay. It's not a guaranteed call, like if it's an order it goes to top, or you could just choose not to call it even if it is a unit. So in most people's cases they'll put their triggers back at top. Here's how I see it. If it goes off, you're meant to call it. And that is how I live everything that has the May cause. There has never been a point in time where I have not done that, even if it's very stupid. I've called an overtrigger from this. I didn't care about it. Yeah, I somewhat regret that decision, but in the end, I still won. And honestly, the overtrigger would not have done much in this situation. So, I don't regret that decision. So even if it says May and you don't have to, I will do it anyways, even if it's very stupid. Don't question it, it's just how I roll, and sometimes it does really work. Black Sage Charon, though, really nice, turns herself into sack fodder by resting her, and she can call more sack fodder. And granted, at the end of the turn it dies, but you have the possibility to get a really powerful rear guard out of it if you're not looking for sack fodder. Either way, nice grade 1, 3 of. 4 of our PG and Aegismare Dragon, 6k base, 0 shield, grade 1 with boost, continuous sentinel. Also, how the fuck is this a dragon? I see the wings, but like, that's a fucking zebra. Don't get me wrong. That's a fucking zebra. Tell me I'm wrong. You may have up to 4 sentinels in your deck. Auto when it's placed on guard circle. Choose one of your units and it cannot be hit on a battle. If your hand has 2 or more cards, choose a card from hand, discard it. Standard PGs. In D era, they decided to give the PGs the ability where if it's in your hand and one other card's in your hand, when you use the PG, you don't have to discard, which is really nice. It means you can be as aggressive as you want. In this deck, that's actually really helpful because at some point, you're going to have to start calling down things you don't want to call if you want to get off PBD. And PBD is a good ability to get off, so take that as you will. I like Aegismare. He's really helpful in this deck. 4 of. Some of these decks actually don't need that PG skill, and some of them do. I mean, well, yeah. In certain cases, in terms of like my memory, there have been times where the decks that I claim not to need them do actually need them, but those are rarer cases than like the decks such as this one, which are overly aggressive to where they actually need that PG. I mean, PvD is not really overly aggressive, but you get my point. On to our main grade 1 and our ride grade 1. 1 copy of the main deck, 1 copy of the ride deck. 8k base, 5k shield, grade 1 boost is Blaster Javelin. Auto when it's rode upon by Blaster Dark, reveal the top card of your deck. Call it as rest if it's a unit card, and discard it if it isn't. So unlike Charon back here, you have to call it, or it goes to drop, which sucks, but A, it gives you call fodder, which is sack fodder for Blaster Dark, and continues rear during your turn. If you have a Blaster in its card name, it gets +2. Okay, I know, like, all of the other cards that had all the other grade 1s in the ride line always had, or grade 2s, always had abilities that gave them power when they weren't on Van, but like, they could have done something else with Blaster Javelin, I feel. Like, the ride lines are so vanilla, in my opinion, because you stay on the grade 3 for the entirety of the game, which is fine, but, like, the grade 2 is always the 50-50 one, and then the grade 1 is the thing that you run because you need a grade 1. That's what it is, and also because it's the only one with the Vanguard skill. And I really hate that about D era, and I wish they would fix that, or at least give us a starter with a skill that is actually unique. Bushy, do one of the two, and I will stop complaining. But until then, I feel like they could have done more with the ride line. Once more back onto this rant, but I'll explain it in a later video, don't worry. So 1 copy in the ride deck, 1 copy in the main deck. I really gotta stop going on these random rants. Next up, we have our grade 2s and 3 copies of Knight of Heavenly Destruction Kapald. How do I feel about this one? I hate this card. 10k base, 5k shield, grade 2 with intercept. Auto when it's placed on rear from hand, counterbalance 1, retire another rear guard. View the top card of your deck, put it to hand. If it's in order of grade 3, call it a rear if it isn't. Okay. So either you're getting a draw out of it, but it requires it to be either in order or grade 3, so you're getting a Persona Raid maybe, or you call it straight to rear. My problem with this is 2 things. 1, it has to be placed from hand. So things like this, and Macha, we'll get to next, I believe, are useless when using this ability, because they call from deck. And the other part is that it requires to rest a rear guard. Now, while that's not much of a problem, if you have my luck of PBD to where your entire hand ends up being triggers by the pure factor of mulligan and the deck just wants to draw triggers to fuck with you, then obviously you're not going to call down a trigger just to use its skill. And in all honesty, if you know me, I've complained about this before, but like when I used to play area, eventually I got locked out of my soul, or like my keyboard stopped working, so I couldn't use my soul, so I had to be stuck with counterblast based decks. And I have grown so sensitive to the ability of using Counterblast that cards that I don't think are good bothers me immensely if they have Counterblast. I understand why he's okay, but this thing bothers me to so much of an extent. But I know one day he's going to help me. I'm just waiting for that time for him to prove me wrong, so I have reasons to kick him out of the deck. Or reasons to keep him in the deck, for that matter. 3 copies of Kapald, because he'll eventually help me. Eventually. When, I don't know, but, 3 of, I guess. 3 of the grade 2 I actually use on a standard basis. Darkness, Maiden, Macha. 10k base, 5k shield, grade 2. There's it. By the way, he's also just card fodder, just to make that clear, so he does prove some purpose. Anyways, Macha's skill. Auto when it's placed on rear. If you have a Vanguard Blaster in its card name, it gets +5. Then Soul Blast 1, retire another rear guard, and look at top 5 of your deck. Choose up to 1 grade 1 or less from among them, call it to rear, and shuffle your deck. So, you can call Charon, because she doesn't have to be placed from hand, unlike this motherfucker. So, you can use Charon to call another thing, and boom, you have 2 sack fodder. If you really want to sack Macha like I did that one time, which wasn't really the smartest idea, but I didn't want to call triggers for it, for PBD, it's okay, because hey, Macha gives you another unit. So, all around, Macha's a really nice card, because it's a guaranteed +5, so it's always a good rusher, and if you really want to, you could try to get a better grade 1 out of it. So, 3 of Macha. And then 4 copies of our main grade 2 and our last grade 2, Blaster Dark, 3 in the main deck, 1 in the ride deck. Auto, when it's placed on Vanna rear. Counterbalance 1, retire another rear guard. Yeah, you get this from Javelin, otherwise it will kind of suck that you have to commit a hand card on grade 1 turn for no apparent reason, especially if you're going first. Choose one of your opponent's rear guards, retire it, and it gets +1 drive for the turn. That is very interesting. I don't know how I feel about this. I'm not so sure if it's just my luck with D-Series Blaster Dark, but back in V, whenever I would use the skill of Blaster Dark to get an extra drive, I would always see a crit, and on like half the time I would see double crits from it, or at least double triggers, and one of them was a crit. So I don't know why with this one I never see triggers, or when I do is I just see a draw trigger, which I guess makes sense because I only run 3 crits. But even in my updated set 3 build, or when I run 7 crits, I still don't see them. So Blaster Dark, interestingly, just hates me, but A, it's okay. You get an ability to kill a rear guard on your side, kill their rear guard, and it gets a drive, and A, you get to pick the rear guard, unlike your last time where your opponent got to pick, and continues rear during your turn. If a rear guard is retired during this turn, it gets +5. So you have to use with either PBD or Macha or itself, because otherwise that ability's not going off. But hey, it's a nice grade 2. I like it. It feels like the feels like the best card out of this entire deck for me, because I know one day it's going to prove useful and actually give me triggers, but until then, it's still useful in my opinion. 3 of in the main deck, 1 in the red deck. On to grade 3s, 4 copies of Knight of War Damage Fosado, 13k base, grade 3 Twin Drive Persona Ride, continues rear, this card cannot be chosen by your opponent's card effects, auto rear, when its attack hits, countercharge 1, soul charge 1. Somehow, the only on-hit ability I will ever get off without having to bribe my opponent somewhat into taking. When I say bribe, I mean ask them, are you sure you want to card this? Because thanks to Mandala's weird obsession with cock blocking, and what I mean by that is, I used 7Cs against him one time, and he never knew what they did. The one time I got to 6 cards because he took all of them without realizing what it does. After that, he stopped taking all of them and started cock blocking them as early as physically possible. And then Wingo Brave, where I called down 4 of them because I was grade locked at grade 2 and 3, and I kind of needed them. So I just went for a Wingo Brave grade 1 rush, and it worked, and now he cock blocks that. So any on-hit ability, he cock blocks, except for this one for some reason. This is the one that he's okay with going through. Has target effect prevention, so you can't kill him with effects. You have to purely murder him via attacks. And, he's an on-hit countercharge, soul charge 1, and adds on-hit pressure. And in this deck, I feel like it works really well, especially if you run out of counterblast early. You can go, if you damage starve yourself, you can kind of lock them down and damage starve them as well, or annihilate their hand in one go, or push them to 6 damage really quickly. Either way, Fosado, if you play it right in this deck, is really good. 4 of Phantom Blaster Dragon, our last normal unit in our main grade 3. 13k base, grade 3 Twin Jet Persona Ride. Auto, when it's placed on Van, choose a card with Blaster and its card name from your soul. You may call it to rear. Act Van once per turn. Counterblast 1, retire 3 rear guards. Choose up to 2 of your opponent's rear guards. Kill them, and this unit gets plus 10 to crit for the turn. So, a lot to unpack from that. First off, ride it, you call Blaster from soul. So you can call itself. Unfortunately, it doesn't have a rear guard, which is another complaint I have about most of the main grade 3s, because everyone but Seraph Snow, maybe Orphis, because I don't remember if Orphis has one, and were those the only 2 grade 3s that have rear guard skills? I'm trying to think very deeply about this. Were those the only 2 grade 3s that had fucking rear guard skills? No, they weren't they? Damn it. Okay, well, either way, no, Overlord also had one. So, I kind of wish this had a rear guard skill so you could call it, but you can at least call Blaster Dark from this, maybe get another retire and a drive out of it, and if you pull an over trigger later, it will be helpful with Twin Drive, and it's a 5k power if you retired this turn, and Blaster Javelin just to get 2k, even though it's kind of the worst ability. And then the ability, obviously, that you run it for, kill 3 of your rear guards. For once, you don't kill the same amount of your opponent's rear guards that you killed, but you pick the 2 that are retired, which is the first for this boy. And then, it still gets the plus 10k to crit, which it's known for. So, 23k beat stick with double crit. All around, really nice. You kill 2 rear guards of your choice. And he swings for a decent number. Obviously, they might not take it unless they're early damage, but if they're not, then you can kind of like combo with Fosado and damage starve them to some extent. And all around, a really nice deck. I mean, really nice grade 3. It is a nice deck after all, 4 of. And next, we have our last card, which is our Order, Hopeful Testode, or Testode. Grade 3 Blitz Order. If you have 3 or more units, it gets plus 15 until end of battle. One of your units. So, interesting card. This is the deck I pulled off the least in, because typically, I call a full board down, and then I murder half of them with PBD over here. And afterwards, I don't really call more cards because my hand is full of triggers by just purely drawing into them. There's no such thing as drive checking triggers for me, apparently, in this deck. So, this never goes off for me because my opponents normally kill my Interceptor, which is typically Blaster Dark, before I can even pull this off. But in the rare cases I do pull this off, it is actually helpful. 3 of the Blitz Order, Hopeful Testode. And that was the deck. I hope you guys enjoyed. It's very interesting. I wish they would give starter a skill, but I'll rant about that later, and hopefully a video that goes up tomorrow. If it doesn't, then I'll be slightly depressed, but hopefully it does. So, I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, if you actually like the deck, or if you just like this video in general. Don't forget to comment so I can hear everyone's opinions on it, because I really like actually reading your opinions. So please, people, comment. I like getting interactions with people. Even though despite the fact I'm an introvert and I shouldn't be saying that, I actually am really... I like interacting with people despite the fact I'm an introvert. And don't forget to subscribe if you really just, like the content. It helps the channel grow. And hopefully one day I'll be able to become a YouTuber that a lot of people know and a lot of people like. So I hope you guys enjoyed the deck. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, donate to the Patreon, join the Discord, follow the Twitch, and I'll see you on the next one. Don't forget to stand up, your vanguards.